Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast. My name is Dena Phillips, and I'll be one of your hosts. I'm a pharmacist and a leader in Oklahoma, and like many of you, I'm on a mission to up my game and improve my leadership skills. I'm so excited to be joining up with two incredible pharmacist leaders, Jesse McCullough and Shawn Bjorndal. They are both sought after leadership experts with a shared passion for helping pharmacists become better leaders. So, guys, it seems only fitting to open the show with a heartfelt message for our friends, family, colleagues at Rite Aid. Just such tragic news coming across the wire these past few days with another bankruptcy announcement and some more closures on the way.
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Dena, and I guess first, welcome. It's good to have somebody here to class this whole operation up, and you are the right person for this. You're going to help Shawn and myself out quite a bit, but to transition from a little bit of lightheartedness and move into something that's very, very serious. I spent over a decade at Rite Aid. And had the privilege of doing a lot of neat things, meeting a lot of great people. Because of my opportunities there, I've been in hundreds of pharmacies. I've met thousands of pharmacists. I've gained a lot of different perspectives. And the news that came out on Monday of this week, just even though I'm not with the organization, it still hurts, right? And I can only imagine the hurt that so many of our colleagues are going through. And so just on behalf of this group here to the listeners, and it's not just the Rite Aid folks, it's all of our colleagues out there at the independents and other chains. There's many headwinds that we're facing. It's just that this one is sort of center of the news cycle right now. Our sincerest best wishes for you, our sincerest encouragement to you, because I'll just tell you, I'm a firm believer that your best days are still ahead of you, that things will get better, but part of that will be around you getting better as well, and I think that's gonna be some of what we talk about here today.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I know a kind word can go a long way. And we'll also be putting some resources down below for places where you can reach out and get in touch. We all need someone to talk to. Shifting gears a bit, I wanted to discuss how we each realized that we were a quote unquote leader. I know for me, I was sort of voluntold that a pharmacy manager was needed in an area in which I had a lot of clinical expertise. No one really seemed too terribly concerned that I had no leadership experience prior to that to speak of. I had the appropriate clinical experience, so I was leadership material, according to how I landed in my first job there. I was promoted to clinical manager, and I inherited 17 direct reports that were looking for solid leadership. Unfortunately for them, that is not what they found in me at the moment. I wouldn't have known good leadership if it hit me on the head. So I was a living example that a good clinician does not a good leader always make. And so I'm certain that I'm not alone in that. Just my own colleagues, but also a broader audience here. I can't be the only one who's proof of concept there. So Shawn, we'll start with you. What's your story?
I think mine goes all the way back to junior high football when the coach told me, "Hey, Shawn, you're a good leader." I had no idea what he was talking about, nor did he tell me like what that even meant, right? And fast forward like you, Dena, to into my freshman year, rookie year of being a pharmacist, right? Then I find myself as a staff pharmacist, one of the busiest stores, retail giants, right? One of the big three, or big two now. Gosh, dang it! And the the supervisor's like, "Oh, Shawn, you should go and manage the 24-hour pharmacy down the street." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I can do this," right? Well, my definition of leading, because I was never taught of what a good leader is, I thought leading by example was sufficient, but that just means in pharmacy that you're doing all the work, because you're trying to show them what good customer service looks like. You're trying to show them everyone what answering the phone looks like. You're trying to show everybody, all of that stuff, just trying to get ahead. And So yeah, so Dena, that's kind of my initial learnings and what I thought was a leader, and I probably didn't. I did that for so long, and I, after learning now the last couple of months of working with Jess in these programs, I'm kind of unfairly judging myself like from this different lens now. But anyways, Jess, how about you?
Right.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Leadership's a funny thing. I saw a statistic recently, and it said something to the effect of, like 53% of all leaders would rank themselves in the top 10% of leaders, right? It's like we tend to have this overinflated opinion of ourselves as far as how good of a leader that we are, and then we find ourselves in situations, Dina, as you describe, or Shawn, like and I had a similar scenario. I wouldn't say that I was. Um, I think the appropriate term may be roped. I think I may have been roped into my first leadership gig in pharmacy, and I was told, "Hey, we think you would be good at scheduling pharmacists." Now, I was a young kid. I was, and at the time within the district that I was working, I was working as a floating pharmacist, which I know that different people have different opinions, and I probably wasn't that good of a pharmacist, in full transparency. But the idea is that I was to be an extension of the district manager, and so I did that for a period of time, and then I got the phone call, "Hey, do you want to schedule?" And I thought, oh my goodness, if I could schedule, and this just shows how warped my view of leadership was. I thought if I could schedule, I could write my own schedule, and now I'm not going to have to work nights or weekends or whatever it turns out to be. And Shawn, I found myself in your scenario. I was working, I was working every day. And I thought that if I showed off that, hey, I'm working this hard, that everybody else would just follow suit, and that wasn't the case. I believe I started scheduling in, I believe it was January of 2002, and by well, it was when they announced the, merger with Brooks. I was with Eckerd at the time. They announced that merger with Brooks. That's about the time that I gave up. I had made it about 34 months of writing a schedule for pharmacists each week. Each week, I would sit down, I would look at the pieces that I had, and I would say something to the effect of, "I don't think it's ever been this bad. I don't think it's ever been this bad." And somehow we would limp through the week and survive to another one. But I may have had a leadership role, but I was given no leadership training. And I got to the point where I've and if you're familiar with Greek mythology, there's a character Sisyphus who was cursed to forever push the boulder uphill, right? And I felt like that's where I was, and I finally tapped out. I said, "That's it. I'm out of this." And and because of that Brooks merger, it was a couple days later. My district manager came knocking on my door, and he said, "Hey, any chance you'd be interested in a clinical position with Brooks? They really want to do clinical things." And after having a couple of weeks to cool off, I decided that, yeah, I'll give that a shot. Um, I am one of the folks who have said I've said yes to pretty much every opportunity that has come my way in the world of pharmacy. And I don't know that's always served me well, and I don't know that's always served the people that I've been leading well. But in 2014, I was asked to go in and cover for my boss at the corporate office. He had some personal things that were going to require that he take some time away, and he said, "Would you come in and run the show?" And just given the situation, yeah, I'll do that. And so, starting at the end of June, last week of June in 2014, and going to the week before Thanksgiving, 2014, I went into the corporate office every week. Um, and whenever you do travel for business, there's a lot of people who think that must be fun and glamorous and whatever. You're staying in hotels, you're eating out. I'll tell you, it gets old. It gets old real quick. And I got myself, I'm in this scenario, and my wife gives me this advice that, hey, if you're gonna be there, you're gonna be doing this. Maybe you ought to be active, right? Maybe you ought to go out and do some walking. And if you're gonna be walking, why don't you listen to a podcast? And in 2014, I didn't even know what a podcast was. But I've had separate conversations with you, Dena, and Shawn, and I've probably told this part of the story, but I could take you to where I was walking. I could take you to the exact place where I was listening to a podcast, and I heard the words that leadership skills can be learned, and I'm going to tell you that that opened the door for me. I remember that quite vividly. And, up to that point, I would have said that I thought leadership was just something that you had. It was something that you were born with. Like we've probably all heard that expression, a natural born leader, right? And so I would have said that, leadership is just, something that you're born with. It's like your eye color or your shoe size or your height or whatever. There's just something that you have. And that day opened my eyes to something else, and I decided, may, if leadership skills can be learned, maybe I should start learning them. And that was a big that was a big change for me, Dena. So that was probably a little long winded, but I hope that maybe somebody's on a walk right now and they're listening to this podcast. Maybe those words will resonate with them, that leadership skills can be learned.
Yeah, maybe so. And I think there's something to be said for each story being unique and yet very relatable.
Mhm.
You have somebody's like imposter syndrome over here. What am I doing here? 17 people are looking at me going, really? You? That's what they gave us?
Mhm.
And Shawn's, I'm going to lead by example and it's going to be great. And why am I working the worst, like so much out of everyone? And then yours to be like, I need something different here. I need a little bit of a encouragement, and we're able to find it. So I know I can relate to all of those things, and I'm sure our listeners can as well. So I think those are all very timely stories for people looking to improve their leadership skills. Jesse, I have heard you mention before the concept of from a book called The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clayson,
Mhm.
specifically the principle of know the law, obey the law.
Yep.
Elaborate for us a little bit in how that can relate when we're examining our own leadership prowess or lack thereof. In my case, really.
This goes back to that summer of 2014. I heard this podcast and it said leadership skills could be learned, and I was like, oh wow, that's an interesting thought. And if you hang around with me for very long, you'll realize that I'm not the brightest guy you're ever going to meet. But I do pick up on things. And one of the things that I realized in those early days of listening to podcasts, I was listening to two like completely different podcasts, two separate days, but they were reasonably close together. And in both of these podcasts, they mentioned this book, The Richest Man in Babylon. Now, I'd never heard of this book, but it was a book. I think it was written in the 1920s, right around the time of the Great Depression, and it was a book on personal finance. And I just took the hint. I'm like, if I'm hearing this from a couple of different places, maybe I should read the book. And it's not a very big book. I think it's maybe 100 pages when it's all said and done. But I got the book and I started reading it, and it's a series of short, or I guess it's a bunch of lessons, but it's a work of fiction. And in chapter one, we're introduced to our hero, who has finds himself in a place of struggle. He finds himself in a place of struggle, and I think that's important to call out today when so many of our colleagues find themselves in a place of struggle. And he looks around, and he's not happy with where he's at, but he realizes that one of his boyhood friends has gone on to become the richest man in Babylon. And he thinks to himself, if only I could be reunited with my boyhood friend, maybe he could tell me how I too could be rich. And just that those elements of the story sort of appealed to me with where I was in 2014, and I think they can appeal to people today. You look around, you're dissatisfied with where you're at. You get to chapter 2, and our hero is able to reconnect with his boyhood friend, and his boyhood friend says something that has made a lasting impact. He the friend, the richest man in all of Babylon says to the poor man, he says, "The reason that you do not have great wealth is either that you do not know the law or you do not obey the law that governs wealth." And that hit me like, wow, that's pretty interesting. And think about there's laws at work all around us. The gravity, law of gravity is at work. You can step off the curb, and whether you know the law, you're going to have to obey it. Right? If and we've probably all done that. We've probably all taken a step, not realizing that there was a step down or a step up, and we've tripped. Maybe we've fallen. We've had that situation happen to us, but that hit me. And then as I started thinking about my education, I got to thinking, oh my goodness, like we would learn all sorts of laws in physics and chemistry and mathematics and economics, and there's laws all around us. And that's where I started. I was like, what if there are some principles that govern how we lead people? And that's where the wheel really started to turn for me, and I started looking for principles like that to be able just to figure out what are the right ways to lead people. Far too often, I'm just going to tell you that in my time, and at that point, I was working as a clinical services manager, director, it doesn't matter what the title was, but we were trying to grow an immunization program. We had taken it from a voluntary program to get to 13,000 pharmacists trained to provide immunizations. We wanted to give millions of flu shots, and we had no idea how that was going to happen. And part of our strategy at the time was to do offsite flu clinics. And each time we came up with one, oh my goodness, it was recreating the wheel. I don't know if you've ever found yourself in a situation where every time was the first time that you were doing it. And this idea that there may be laws, that there may be principles that govern this was interesting. This was attractive to me, and that's what got me moving down that pathway to see what are those things that you can do so that you can lead well.
I love
Th-
that.
There's
I
a
know
lot there
I'm in a
too.
position myself to be eager to hear more. But what do you got, Sean?
Well, I mean that there's just going from that one law that you spoke of, and you showed how you can branch it out into all these other different laws that we don't know.
Hmm.
And think about pharmacy school and what they taught you. I mean, everything was like all these protocols, all these drugs, all the scientific knowledge, right? I mean, zero laws in
Hmm.
the leadership realm or even communications with talking to people besides
Hmm.
being a robot and going through the consultation regimen, right? Depending on
Hmm.
when you went to school, it was
Right.
different, right? And then you get out in the world, and yes, sure, you might have taken an emerging leader course if you were in a corporation. They didn't teach you this type of leadership, though. I mean, they taught you how to, talk about metrics and all this other things and what you need to do and blah blah blah, and like still nothing going down the pathway of like these leadership laws that you can learn to be actually more effective. And I just think honestly, it's we're at like the iceberg tip here on what we can do and how we can help our fellow colleagues just diving in. And one thing I want to point out is you took the initiative to learn all this stuff, Jess. It's not easy. Like there's
Mhm.
nothing passive about this. You need to
No.
dive in and admit, like, I don't know this. Like, learn it.
Yeah,
Right.
it's interesting as I've had conversation, and I've had separate individual conversations with each of you, where we've talked about this, and I want to applaud each of you because you have, I guess I would call it the humility of spirit to be able to say, oh yeah, this is something I need to learn. right? This is a place where I can get better. We have our own stories of dealing with physicians, and some physicians can be rather arrogant or stuck on themselves or whatever. And I found that a lot of pharmacists can be that way too. They think that, oh, I have this, the degree means that somebody should do everything that I say, right? And we know that's not true, right? I mean, how many times have you done counseling and you've, later found out that what you told them is like they went and did the exact opposite, right? I can only imagine, Dena, and your anti-coag clinic, because I spent some time in an anti-coag clinic at once, and it was like, or at one point, and it was like, oh my gosh, that is not what we talked about. But they went and they did this, and it was like, oh wow. So you have to have that humility of spirit, and that's something that not everybody has. It's something that not everybody has, but I'll tell you this, and this I intend this to be a word of encouragement to everybody who listens this. No matter where you find yourself, whether you have a title or not, I want you to at least be open to this idea. And the idea is that you are indeed a leader. Now, that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And it makes a lot of people uncomfortable because they've experienced poor leadership before. Like, they don't want to be associated with that, right? It's like, I don't want to be one of those people, right? But if you can learn good leadership, like, it's it is so inspiring. It's inspiring to learn good leadership. It's inspiring to be able to help people, uh, unlock their potential and to have the impact that they desire to have. So it's really really a neat thing. And as I started studying leadership, I will tell you that the first thing that happened is I began to see just the deficits in leadership all over the place. You turn the TV on at night, and I don't care what your political persuasion may be, but if you watch the news, you will see illustrations of poor leadership, right? You'll find that. I was able to see poor leadership in where I worked. I was able to see poor leadership in the schools that my kids attended. I was able to see poor leadership, in the community. I was able to see poor leadership when I went into the grocery store or the restaurant or whatever. I was able to see poor leadership in my church. But where it really hit home is when I looked in the mirror and I saw, well, there's poor leadership right here, and there's poor leadership in your household. And that's what sort of nudged me to go down and start to learn these things and practice these things. And now here we are a decade later, right? It's quite literally a decade later. And the need for leadership, good leadership, has not gone away. If anything, there's more of a need for it today than ever before. And, so no matter where you are in that continuum, whether you have a title, whether you don't have a title, I want you to at least be open to this idea that you are a leader and that you can learn some skills that can dramatically impact everybody around you. And if that doesn't encourage you, I don't know what will, because we need good leaders to be able to move us forward into these better days of pharmacy that we all aspire to.
Yep. Agreed.
The conversation reminds me, my husband is always, he's a software developer, and he's been doing his job for a while, and he's kind of risen up through the ranks. And each time they're like, hey, we need you to, look over some coding of the junior developers and that kind of thing. And he's always like, no, you don't understand. I'm not the man. I stick it to the man. I cannot
Mhm.
ever be the man. And so that kind of just makes me laugh when it's like, you're a leader, whether you want to be or not. So you
Yeah.
may as well figure out how to be the man instead of trying to stick it to him all the time.
Shawn, think about this. When you in your story, when you got put in that 24-hour store, you probably had some technicians that could impact how the day went. You had some technicians that could make the day really good. You had some technicians that could make the day really bad, right? Whenever I was scheduling, I remember getting stories of, well, hey, if you send this person into our pharmacy, the techs aren't going to come in, right? And I didn't have the language at the time, but that's all about leadership. It's about people that, technicians leading other technicians. It's about pharmacists not being able to lead a technician to the point where the technician says, I'm not coming in. I'm not going to put myself in that environment. And so, like, when you adopt that leadership lens, I think it just opens your eyes. It opens your eyes to all those different things that leadership impacts. A phrase that was shared with me is that everything rises and falls on leadership, right? I'll and this probably isn't the happiest thought as we start to wind down this podcast, but if you look around and you see everything falling, what does that tell us? It tells us that we need better leaders. And now I want to make sure that I differentiate here, because like I don't want, Shawn, when you make sound clips or sound bites or whatever reels of this thing, I don't want you making the inappropriate reel of this. But when you see poor leadership, what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to be like judgmental and convicting on somebody who is in that role and perhaps struggling as a leader. Right, Dena, you were saying you got yourself into this leadership position, and like you didn't get in there to be judged and to deal with those hardships, right? But there is this
Exactly.
responsibility. There is an invitation that exists for all of us to improve our leadership skills, right? And I think that's really that's the differentiation that I would ask you to consider. It's that if you see things going down, that's not for us to convict poor leaders. That's an invitation for all of us, no matter where we are, to improve our leadership skills. And maybe that's just a little mind shift for you, but I would ask that you give that some solid consideration. That, hey, what role can I play in improving things around here? And I'll tell you, you may be marveled to the impact you can have by starting to learn these skills and really applying them in the environment that you find yourself.
All right. I am really excited. I am very encouraged, and I would encourage our listeners to stick around. There's more to come in later episodes on laws and principles that are driving us toward helping us push our leadership skills forward. And so I am really looking forward to that. I'm super encouraged by what we hear today, and that, there's hope out there for someone who finds themselves the man, even if they maybe didn't want it or didn't know about it or didn't think they wanted it, and now they do. And maybe it was something they sought after on purpose, and then get in the role and find themselves ill-equipped. And so I'm very encouraged by some things to come. Shawn, before we wrap up here, I wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit about RPH Ally. Just, what is that initiative?
A lot of it is stemming from what Jess is teaching us here. So what we're currently working on now, we have one kind of bigger package out there right now that's really intense. But we want, knowing that everyone is at different places, right? And they have different times and different abilities and capabilities and a lot of different resources at stake here. We're creating some other smaller packages and trying to make it more all inclusive to where we all need to work on leadership. So we're all gonna like try to push people towards different things that may fit their schedules better or may fit their price point better, things like that. So but we really want to help all people who kind of are looking to better themselves through leadership skills and enhance their knowledge and their skill sets. Anything I missed, Jess, on that?
No, I think that, that's really our RPH Ally is all about being an ally to pharmacists, right? And I think one of the foundations that we all need to have is this leadership skill. I don't care what discipline of pharmacy you find yourself in. If you find yourself in traditional community, traditional hospital, if you find yourself in an anticoagulation clinic, that's easy for me to say. If you find, no matter what discipline you find yourself in, these are skills that will help you. These are things that will take you from where you are, and it's going to level you up 2, 3, 4 levels. Sadly, it's just something that's largely been overlooked. And understandably so. The pharmacy school curriculums are just so jam packed that there's not room for even what they want to have in there, much less some things like this. But these are absolutely life changing and career changing principles and lessons that you can learn that can really unlock the future for you.
Yes, I 100% agree. For our listeners, we will have some links to RPH Ally in the description. We would love it if everyone would head over there and sign up so you can start reaping the benefits of having a team of allies in your corner. So head on over there to the website, check that out. There will be more to come on that also. We will also have a quick link to the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, below, if anyone's interested in picking that up. So you can check all those in the description. You can also find Jesse, Shawn, and myself over on LinkedIn. We would love to connect with you there. So we all have active profiles on LinkedIn. So just check us out, send us a connect, and we would love to chat with you. In the meantime, keep leading your teams with confidence from the boardroom to the break room, and we will see you again soon.